greetings to you, and thank you for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Folks, as I love to boast, Southern Ontario is the place you want to be for successful teams, athletes, executives, and in today's case, just good people and their personal stories. Our guest today is a special fella, and I'll guarantee that he won't like me saying that, but hear me out. Spencer Miller has cerebral palsy and has spent his life in a wheelchair. Yet his disability is not used as an excuse. It's an obstacle that he overcomes every single day. How about being a motivational speaker for the Raptors? How about energizing those in the corporate world like Nike, Adidas, and Gatorade, to just name a few? How about hosting a national radio show and a podcast called The Spencer Miller Tonight Show and the Isolation Series, chatting with guests like Mike Tirico, Dana White, Bob Costas, and so many others. In addition, he's traveled the world telling his story while helping others through charity work alongside the likes of the late Princess Diana and our favorite MMA fella, George St. Pierre. Spencer Miller, this is awesome to reconnect with you. It's been a long, long time. I'm appreciating you coming on our show. And, how have you been, partner? It's been a long time.
It definitely has, and it's great to be here, and I'm glad that we were finally able to do this. First of all, I would like to apologize to all the viewers today for the Blair Witch Project-like video work I am doing on my camera, but hopefully I don't make too many of you sick while watching this episode of the podcast, but we do what we can. But yes, Bubba and I have had the good fortune and sometimes not so good fortune of knowing each other for over 25 years, and that really makes me feel old when I say that out loud, but you have always been a big supporter of me from afar. It's been a long time, like you said, since we've connected, but we've always kind of stayed in touch on the periphery.
Well, I'm going to leave this up to you. Why don't you let our folks know how we got to know each other?
Because you want to leave it up to me so that they get the actual story as opposed to
that's
the story.
it. Yes.
Yes. So right before we came on the air, Bubba and I were catching up a little bit, and he said, it's nice to reconnect, even though we never really met each other over the years, but we had the call-in show, and I said, Bubba, how insulting is that? I came and co-hosted the show with you and Steve Foxcroft at least a dozen times, half of which Steve and I went head-to-head on a very intense wrestling trivia podcast, which he was the moderator of, but clearly he forgot.
Well, it was so long ago, I actually really did forget that. And for those that don't know, or at least particular people that are in the area, the show he's talking about was one of my first shows, Halton Sports Week, on in Burlington, seen on cable TV in Burlington and Oakville, and in some parts of the Hamilton area. And now I'm telling you, those were some magical days. We had a lot of fun. And you were a regular caller to our phone-in show, and it was amazing to me that you always had such a wide variety of knowledge of sports. I mean, sports has been, I know you've got other interests, but sports is one of your things in your life, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've been around sports as long as I can remember, and I've been very lucky to befriend and work with a wide variety of individuals in the sports world, like you're seeing here right now with David Ortiz, my friend and Hall of Famer, and there I am being interviewed by Ryan Ruocco on the Yes Network before the Raptors game, and I've worked with so many others. There's my buddy George St. Pierre, who has been a friend of mine for almost as long as you and I have been friends, Bubba. And what's cool about George St. Pierre is that I legit have been in his corner for all of his championship fight defenses minus a couple. So to be able to work with him at the height of his powers was really, really cool. And I've had a really special relationship with World Wrestling Entertainment over the last half decade as well. That was the last picture you saw with myself and one of their performers, Montez Ford, and they're coming here to Toronto in just about a month's time to do a big weekend for their premium live event, Money in the Bank. So I get to catch up with them and spend a few days with them again. But my whole thing is this, is that no matter what your situation is, you got to make the best of it. And that's what I've been doing my whole life, because people always look at me, even in 2024, and they have preconceived notions about people in wheelchairs. And I have made it my mission to say, sure, you can have your preconceived notions all you want, but the fact of the matter is this: my chair does not define who I am. It just so happens to help me get from point A to point B.
And that's the wonderful thing, is that your attitude has always been in the right place. But let me throw this to you, because I think it's important for people to know. You talk about, exactly that, the fact that you won't be limited to it. But how have you been able to do that? I mean, you have faced many challenges, but how do you continue to have that mindset that you will not be limited by your disability?
Well, first of all, when you get to wake up every morning and have an opportunity to look at this reflection every day and realize that I'm one of the best looking, most charismatic, smart people that I've ever met in my entire life, that helps. But in addition to that, my humble nature clearly also helps. But all kidding aside, it's all about surrounding yourself with a great group of people. And a lot of those people that you showed on the slideshow, including some others that you have not, to a lot of those people, to a lot of your viewers, rather, and listeners to this, look at these people and they see them as celebrities and different things like that. I'm fortunate to call all of these people friends of mine who support me unconditionally, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever it is. Or in this case, you're showing a picture of me and fellow Canadian Kiefer Sutherland, because I worked with him on a show called Designated Survivor that was on ABC and CTV, and then eventually Netflix, where I played the assistant director of the Environmental Protection Agency. So that was a lot of fun. And, we started talking about working together when he was still working on the highly successful show 24. And he said, Spence, if I ever do a show in Toronto, I would like you to be a part of it. And I sort of brushed it off. But then as soon as they started talking about doing Designated Survivor, he called me and I sat down with him and the creator of the show, David Guggenheim, and 3 hours later my character was created.
Amazing. I look at my schedule and I don't know how I sometimes put a day together. It's like I was saying to a colleague just a couple of hours ago that it all feels like just one big month. That's all packed in one day. I'm just go, go, go. Well, you are also go, go, go. Actor, speaker, sit-down comedian, podcaster, sportscaster. You do it all. I want to focus on the comedy side of things. And already you've cracked some jokes. What's that like going in front? I know I could never do that. I could not go in a setting where there were 25 people in front of me. I'd be so nervous. And I'm then trying to make them laugh. What is that experience like for you?
Well, every audience is different, so you never know what audience you're going to be put in front of, and so you just need to be able to adapt as quickly and swiftly as possible. And some days are easier than others, absolutely no question about that. But it's all about reading the room, and if you get one person laughing, then you get another person laughing. It's a trickle-down effect, and then as soon as that starts happening, people take a big, deep breath and are like, oh, we can laugh and we can enjoy this. Because a lot of the time when I start cracking jokes, it's very self-deprecating at my own expense, or combined with somebody else, in this case you, Bubba, and people don't really know how to react to that because it's coming from somebody in a wheelchair. But when they realize that I'm just like everybody else and I just want to try and make people laugh and enjoy themselves, they quickly relax and realize that they can just be themselves.
Well, that's a huge lesson there, Spencer, for so many of us, is that, one, you have to be able to laugh, and we have to be able to laugh at ourselves and some of the crazy things that we do, and the successes we've had and some of the failures that we've had as well, too. You talk about, again, some of these things that you have done. One of the things I'm always very honored to see you, whether I hear or whether I see or I know what's going on with you, is that your ability, and I talked about it off the top, to be a motivational speaker. And I guess it's kind of like the comedy thing in a different way, because you're speaking to large groups. But I'll tell you, fella, you've spoke to some very, very important people, and with some very, very high level companies as well too. How do you get that done? Is that something that you have an agent doing this for you, or are you just reaching out to people?
Well, like I said to you off the top there, Bubba, is yes, I have an agent. I actually have 4 agents for different things, and they do a great job, and that's why I pay them. But at the same time, because of the relationships that I've cultivated over the years across so many different platforms, let me give you an example. Right now, the Baltimore Orioles are in town playing the Toronto Blue Jays, and I have so many friends on that team that when they come back in August, I'm going to do a motivational talk for them at some point during the series to help them in their playoff push. Now, I know that this is a Southern Ontario show, so for those diehard Blue Jays fans, they may not appreciate hearing that I'm going to do that for the opposition. But when you get an opportunity like that and realize that team is doing some great, great things, I like to lend my expertise in any way that I can.
And you've forged a relationship with the New York Yankees as well, too, it seems.
I have, yes. I have a great relationship and have for a long, long time. There I am with Meredith Marakovitz, the sideline reporter of the Yes Network for the Yankees. That was from a few years ago. I have a little less wrinkles there. There I am introducing Roberto Alomar during his Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame induction to St. Mary's and different things like that. So I love being able to have the relationships that I'm able to have with the people in sports that I'm able to do, because as you're seeing in this B-roll video that we're showing right now, these guys just love being normal people. And for a lot of these people that are watching this show, they look at them as celebrities and big athletes, and rightfully so. But at the end of the day, Bubba, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, and the real talent lies in if you can put your pants on 2 legs at a time.
Amazing. Well, I think at heart, and this is how you and I met, it's through sports. Do you mind if we talk about a couple of sporting things?
If we didn't, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? So let's do it.
NHL playoffs. Okay, straight up. I don't know how you think. Are the Oilers Canada's team?
Yes.
No!
Yes, because here's the thing. There's no more Canadian teams left, obviously. And at the end of the day, Bubba, whether you're an Edmonton Oilers fan or not, fact of the matter is we are entering a Stanley Cup final on Saturday, which only for the 3rd time or 4th time since 1993, when the Montreal Canadiens were the last Canadian franchise to actually bring home the Stanley Cup, is a Canadian team competing for the Stanley Cup. Now, we all know what happened in 2020 when the Leafs were up 3-1 against the Montreal Canadiens, and by all accounts should have won that series, but they choked more than I do every time somebody tries to get me to jog, but I digress. But I do think with the talent of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid and the absolute transformative season that Zach Hyman has had as a result of those two other players as well, I think they have the firepower to get the drought done for the first time in 31 years. The only question is, will Stuart Skinner still be able to ride the hot streak that he found after getting benched for those two games earlier in the playoffs in favor of Calvin Pickard?
Well, those are outstanding points and certainly ways to look. I think that's probably a lot of what Oilers fans and I think it's also important to think to Connor McDavid, who was seen by many as the greatest player of his era, that he finally gets himself a cup or at least gets into the cup. So I think that's a great thing. But I'm going to tell you this there, Spencer. You cannot convince me that people in Calgary and Vancouver are cheering for Edmonton.
Yes, I can, because they want to see the streak end. They may not outwardly cheer for this team because of their allegiances. You're absolutely right. But everybody wants to see the streak end.
Okay, so you're while we're on hockey, you've already graced yourself with your love for the Maple Leafs. What would you do with this team here? You talk about Stanley Cup droughts. I mean, I was born in 1967, the last time the Cup was in Toronto. What would you do to get that team back on track, or do you think that they're on track right now?
I think bringing in Keith Pele as the new president and CEO of MLSE, he is a no-nonsense individual and has always been that way in his career, whether it was at TSN, whether it was at Rogers, whether it was the president of the Argos when they won in 2004, and so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be a real game changer, not to mention the fact that he's coming off of being the president of the European Tour for the last 8 years or something like that. So I think that's going to be a real difference. And I do think if they are able to get UC Soros or somebody to address the goaltending situation and really help Joseph Wall, really get to the next level of his development, that's even better based on the fact that Joseph Wall has proven that he can be a good goaltender, but right now he's getting more injured than me, and I'm handicapped.
Okay, well, I'm enjoying your analysis here. We're on the same track. What about those Blue Jays? Last place in the American League East. What's wrong with this team?
Let me tell you something right now. The Blue Jays have pieces on the baseball diamond that are good pieces. Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as well as a couple of other individuals, are good building blocks. The fundamental issue right now with the Toronto Blue Jays comes down to two things, and it's called Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins.
Oh, my.
There's one thing that you can, do well on the business side, and they have absolutely unequivocally done that and done a great job with the renovation and whatnot. But clearly, these guys do not care about the actual product on the field, because if they did, then not only would they be more productive in this previous off season than they were, instead of bringing in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and just re-signing KK, they would have been more productive. But like Edward Rogers and all of the rest of the people at the top who make the decisions in the end need to realize that no sports franchise that I can think of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bubba, no sports franchise that I can think of ever lets a general manager or a president of a team stick around where you can fire 3 managers of your ball club and still keep your job.
Yeah, there's something that's got to be done there, and you know we're actually having kind of like a little sports podcast on top of the podcast right now. You do your own podcast right now. Like, where can we find that, and how much fun is that for you?
Well, I started it at the beginning of the pandemic because everything shut down, and the fact of the matter is that you need an outlet no matter who you are. So obviously, thank you for putting that picture up, because obviously my arm is getting tired, so I apologize for that. But in the end, like I was saying, we all need an outlet. So I wanted an outlet, so I went back to my radio roots, because I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but shortly after I moved to Toronto, I ended up being on the #1 morning show for radio in Toronto on 102.1 The Edge. So I had a lot of experience doing radio at that point. So when everything was shut down for film and television, I was like, let me go back and do this. And you can find it now on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And for those of you who are against the establishment, quote unquote, you can go to Podbean as well.
Well, we'll certainly make sure that people know where your podcasts are, and certainly whatever we can do to get you more listeners. Not like you need it. You probably got like 10 times what we have, maybe even 100 times what I have. But I've listened to you, and I think it's so great to hear you talking about sports. I can sense your passion. One more thing that I have to bring up here is you have a big love for music as well too, don't you?
I do, but before we get into that, I just want to divert for a minute, because I know that you keep tabs on me fairly regularly, and I wouldn't be doing your audience a service if I didn't talk about this, and that very simply is, we all struggle with things, no matter who we are, and we talk about mental health more so now than ever before and everything like that. It's the same for me. So yes, I'm very happy that I'm very successful and I get to do some great things, but every single day we are all battling with something, whether it's me battling with something physical or something around me or whatever the case may be. So it's always important to appreciate what you're able to do and be able to surround yourself with people, like I said, but cherish the moments, because it is the moments that you get to have in whatever vocation you do that help balance out the difficult times. And if I'm being perfectly honest as well, it is long-lasting relationships like I have with you, Bubba, that I know when you support me with my podcast or my acting or whatever the case may be, even from afar, I know that you got my back, and people need to have people like that around them in order to succeed.
Well, dude, you have no idea what you do for other people. And I'm going to throw this one last question to you here. Like, and I mean this honestly. Like, do you realize what a role model you are to so many people? Do you realize that?
I do not, because I just do my thing, and outside of not being able to hold my camera steady for your director, who wants to probably shoot me at this point after half an hour of looking at the crippled version of the Blair Witch Project, or whatever you want to call it, I just do my thing, and I do the best I can, and, if people like what I have to say, great. If they don't, then I don't really have time for it, because I'm too old for that.
Well, I like what you say, and I know there's a bunch of people that like what you say, and there's a bunch of people, Spencer, that appreciate you, the things you do, the fact that you go out of your way to make everyone's day better, whether it's just through motivational speaking, whether it's just talking about the Maple Leafs or the Blue Jays. You're a fantastic fella, and I'm really proud and really appreciate that you've come on our podcast to tell your story and give us your opinion on some sports stuff. And I'm hoping a lot of people, again, check you out on your podcast. So again, thank you so much for coming on, partner.
Absolutely. And, just as a final thought from a music perspective for a moment, because I know you were going there until I diverted it. Two of my really good friends who I've been fortunate enough to work with over the years are Zach Brown of the Zach Brown Band and Justin Timberlake. So, just from a musical perspective, to be able to be a part of their shows over the years and do what I've been able to do with them, it's been something really, really special. And, they have always had my back as well. And it has been an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you. I hope that I can come back on the podcast again in the not too distant future. I promise your director and your audience and yourself, by that point, I will get a stand to put my phone on so it doesn't look like the Blair Witch Project. But I hope people have gotten something out of today's episode. And honestly, like I said from the beginning, you have always been there, and we had so much fun with Sports Week back in the day. I will do anything for you anytime you ask, buddy.
You're a good man, my fella. Thank you for joining us. Take care of yourself.
You too.
That's your Sportsline podcast fix for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking to people who are infatuated with sports and infatuated with being good folks. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say, be sure to comment, folks. For the dedicated crew that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.